Hello everybody, my name is Danny TC, TheCriminalViolin. I want to talk today about something I've actually been inspired to talk about for years, and that is something I have observed and found, not just in Google Earth and Maps and in person, but just in general. It seems like it's very true across the entirety of the United States, of how this system here really works, and specifically around the government, tied in with big fossil fuel and big automakers when it comes down to development of entire suburban communities. It's a pain in the ass for somebody like me who is a lifelong diehard transit fanatic or transit whore, not whatever the heck you want to define me as. I've jokingly called myself a transit whore many a time. It's not at all unapplicable, and thus super into transit planning and also city planning, because I have a personal belief throughout my entire life that the only logical way to truly build a proper transit system, and one that's made to serve every walk of life across an entire development or an entire city area, metropolitan area, is to build and develop the city plans from the transit plans first, and emphasize public transit and pedestrians over motor vehicles. Always put the motor vehicles dead last, put public transit first, along with pedestrians. You build that out and plan that out first, then you build out your road layouts and your pedestrian path layouts and all the other lane layouts that are very biased to public transit and pedestrians, and of course then you're going to end up having a case where you have a properly functioning transit system in a properly functioning city where literally everybody, no matter where they are, will always be able to get around reliably, quickly, and frequently, and very easily. That's of course noted for context. All of that just really hurts me and bugs me to my core when it comes down to how the US has always functioned in terms of city planning. Without further ado, let me show you a handful of examples of this BS that the US planning has been for a lot longer than I've been alive, but especially I noticed heavily happening within the last, I'd say, 10 to 15 years. For a case of example, let's take a look at this. This is around Mount Scott in southeast Portland and Lentz and all that, and you'll notice that this is how the suburb sprawl was implemented. It was actually implemented still in a really shoddy, shitty, low-quality fashion that causes a lot of problematic traffic, but at the same time, it at least had some logical sense to it, and that is the fact that everywhere you went, you had a connectivity to a major thoroughfare, or streets that lead you to a major thoroughfare. You had access across the entirety of a suburban neighborhood, as you can see, back in the day. Now, these are like 40s, 50s, 60s. Well, I'd say 40s and 50s suburbs predominantly, right? Even 30s. Now, here is an example of suburban developments that were built predominantly and very heavily in the 1970s in the US. This was the road layout. You'll notice how quickly it changed. Now you had cul-de-sacs all over the place. Boom, 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 boom. Just endless dead ends of cul-de-sacs everywhere in these suburban streets, but you still had direct connections to your major thoroughfare streets. An example, this is 170th Avenue in Aloha. This is actually my old neighborhood. In fact, I literally lived on 172nd on this cul-de-sac here. For 17 and a half years of my life, I grew up there. This change was also blew my mind. I'm like, what? You completely took out all of the athletic fields of Mountain View Middle School, which literally, by the way, was in my backyard. But yeah, so this is my old neighborhood, and that was the old park. I even helped build, last I checked, it's actually the same exact playground build and setup. I helped build it as of the recording of this video, of course, which is basically, let's just put it this way, simply the end of 2021. But you can just see how you still had direct connections all over the place. Yes, you had dead ends of cul-de-sacs everywhere, but you can see how it kept continuing. And you always had direct access to major thoroughfares. Here's where things are going to get interesting. If you pay close attention, you will have noticed something. And that is that in this mess of predominantly 1970s built and some 1980s built suburban communities of America, you'll notice that there's some things that are out of place. And these are hints at the problem ever since, especially right around 2004. So actually, really the last 20 years. I was saying 10, 15. It's really the last 20 years they've been doing this. But you look at this and, like, this makes no fucking sense. It just dead ends for no reason. They built this too. I remember when they built this. I remember when they built that. It makes no sense. You can see how suddenly it went from making at least some sense to no sense, no sense, no sense. Oh, hey, would you look at this? No sense. Also no sense. None of this makes sense. And can you see why it makes no sense? What is the point of consistently making consistent connections to thoroughfares? These don't have it. Dead end, dead end. These are not driveways. These are pedestrian paths. The fact they even just chose to put that there it blew my mind. But I believe there's fencing there. At least originally there was that blockaded people from using it. It's not anymore. But yeah, you see how the only connection they have to any street, vehicular specifically wise, is all the way weaving around to here. They don't have any kind of connection truly to a thoroughfare. And then you look over here, and what do you know? No direct connections to a thoroughfare. The thoroughfare is here, and neither of these have any connections to a thoroughfare. They're basically just looking at the thoroughfare, but then they have to drive, say you live here, you literally have to drive all the way around like this, and then you either got to go this way until you get to, I believe, again, it's 1/60th or 1/63rd. You either got to go all the way to there, but yeah, to be fair, in the car it's not very far, but you think about it, it's not logical. If you have this direct connection area to thoroughfares, why wouldn't you put it there? You know, or they have to go all the way through here, past this, also a logical layout, and then go, I guess, through to here is what you could do. Or if you want a light, so you don't have to sit there and hope you don't get T-boned, go all the way to Davis and then to 170th. You think about how roundabout that is. Like, you have to go all the way around Charlie's Barn just to get out of your own neighborhood in your own complex. This makes no sense, and it's one of those things that's always really agitated me. But if you're keen and you've been paying attention, I think you're already now able to understand where I'm going with this and the point I'm trying to make. You see how they just squeeze them in there? Like, sense. No fucking sense. I'm glad the U-pick is still there. Hopefully it stays. But, like, really? There's a lot of areas around here actually I'm annoyed by. Like, the only connection to over here to 185th in this entire neighborhood is if you go from here up through here. Or actually, no, sorry, not even there. Nope, that's a dead end too. Hold on, hang on. Where's the entrance? Here. Nope, here. No, is that not true either? Nope, it's Johnson. So you have to go all the way down here, and then you can go all the way up here. Then you got around the corner, all the way. You're basically already to baseline again. See? It's right here. You're almost all the way to baseline. Just to round this corner, to come through here, and then go up here, and then here. Or, if you don't want to round the corner and go all the way through here to get to this street, which then makes no sense, you can also do this, where you follow it down, back down. Actually, you can even do this. Woo. But see, these aren't streets that can hold buses. They're true inner suburban streets. It makes no sense. It makes no fucking sense. Like, you just think about how American city planning and transit planning, it never makes any sense. And then, yeah, you get towards the downtowns of, like, Beaverton and stuff on the west side. I mean, what the fuck is this mess, man? Railroad track. Intersection with Lombard and Farmington, right next to fucking 217. Of course, you have this. Oh my god. Like, this is a horror show. This is pure horror show. That's what this is. Like, this was an attempt at an improvement. Is the slip lane for the turns. It's bad, man. Like, none of this makes any fucking sense. Like, look at this. Everything's way too close together. All the intersections and roads are, like, What is this travesty? What is this horror show of a fucking mess over here? Especially, when TV Highway and Farmington are this close together. This is TV Highway and this is Farmington. Like, what is this mess? I understand it's because of the history that this used to be swamp. Then they filled it in. Then they had to build it from there. Then there was farms. Then they had to build from the farms. I'm digressing at this point and starting to get stuck on a bunch of other peeves of mine with planning. So ultimately, none of this makes sense, right? And this especially modern illogical developments is not exclusive to the Portland, Vancouver metro area of Oregon and Washington. It's not. Or even Oregon or Washington. Or the West Coast. You could look to LA, San Francisco. You could look to the small places like in Bend. You could look to Boise, Nampa, Spokane Coeur d'Alene corridor. You could look probably even in places like Bozeman and Billings and Idaho Falls and Twin Falls and Jackson and definitely SLC and Albuquerque, Santa Fe. Like, you look anywhere in the US and you're gonna find this shit. Like, let's go, just for the sake of it, let's go to, I don't know, how about fucking Tejas, because they're consistently lately getting a lot of credits for things about like doing things right, doing things well. Well, let's go to some of their more recent developments. I'm forgetting the name of it, it's slipping my mind right now. I'm thinking of it though. It's Richardson, like that vicinity. So yeah, Richardson, Mesquite, Bulk Springs. Like, you look at a lot of these places, especially the newer ones, you can see from this far away, you can tell what are the newest developments. You can tell the basic ages of them. This is definitely 70s. This is definitely older than that. Probably 50s, 60s, and then suddenly, boom, this is like early 2000s, and then basically 2010 in past are these ones. You can literally tell just by the road layouts. Like, they're terrible. They're inexcusably terrible. In fact, Forney clearly is like a perfect example. Heartland, like, what the hell is this mess, man? Oh my god. Like, you still have to do that. And like, look. This is the perfect, like, example right here visually. Look at this shit. Boom. You have a direct connection, right? Oh, but what is this? Oh, you have to go like this in order to get around. Or like this, or like this. But look, it dead ends here. You have to go all the way around like this. Or down like this and then back up again. Or, why? It's infuriating. It's maddening. It makes no sense. It just makes no sense. Like, here is inexcusable too. They absolutely should have had a continuation of a road. Like, right here would have been a perfect place. You could have literally just went bump, 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 all the way through here, down, and just made like a ring road around it, and it would have been fucking perfect. Here's an even more modern example, because see, they're still building them. They still have the plots laid out for foundations. Where's your direct connection to your thoroughfares? Oh, you gotta go all the way from an actual major thoroughfare, which is pretty much over here, which stops being a major thoroughfare because it's not. It's a connection to a major thoroughfare, or here for that matter, for appearance's sake, or here. But like, you have to look at how much you have to fucking bob and weave just to get in or out. And then think about being a pedestrian. Somebody who's incapable of having a car. Can't afford it, whatever it is, a student. Somebody who doesn't have access to a vehicle, or doesn't have access to the funds for it because they gotta worry about their housing and everything else, right? Or people who could really use at least 50, 40, 30% of the time public transit access. There's nowhere nearby public transit access. Like, look at this shit. And they're just getting dead-ended down here. Like, what? Hello? None of the development makes any fucking sense. My point for pointing these things out and mentioning them is, and I sincerely believe this to be true, is the fact that I think what it is proof that in the United States, the big fossil fuel lobbies and the big automobile lobbies are still in full control over the codes and the developments and the blueprints for building suburban neighborhoods. Very blatantly. Like, their money, their lobbying efforts are still in 100% dictatorial control over this nation's planning practices. I think this is proof in the pudding, because the fact it's been evolving further and further against pedestrians, and more clearly biased towards making money off of the fuel, let alone making money off of the cars. And the reason why they'd make more money off the cars than thus off of the fuel is because it's psychological. You might not even consciously think it, but especially as a pedestrian or somebody who needs access to public transit in these kind of suburbs, right? When you need that access, and everybody, it's a basic human right and necessity right there, is public transit and accessibility across, all the work areas. So this is a blatant fact. I think almost everybody can agree on that. So if you're one of these people, or if you're somebody who's very reliant on GPSs, or for that matter, you just aren't good with being able to figure out where you're going visually or directions or anything like that, this is a horror for you because it creates a scenario, and it's clearly very intended. Basically like a labyrinth, almost, where you have to take an obscene amount of time. And it's actually, especially on foot, it's very confusing to navigate your way through these places, let alone find a place that you're trying to get to. It's incredibly, incredibly confusing. It is so much at once. And at the same time, you have to keep in mind what turns you've made. And you've already made 1,000,000,001. But you also have to remember either where you came from, or you have to figure out how the hell to get back to a main thoroughfare. Or at least to a road that'll allow you to get to a main thoroughfare. But how are you supposed to necessarily know? It's one of these things, again, to me, therefore, is blatantly clear that it's intentionally made to be against anybody who wants to go car free, or at least try to cut down on the use of a car. Anybody who requires or would like to have public transit, and it also is a guarantee that it's intentionally against bicyclists, or even more so, pedestrians. Because just put yourself in the shoes of a pedestrian. I am one. And somebody who relies on public transit. So put yourself in the shoes of that person, right? Maybe you are one of those people too, so you kind of understand the struggle here, especially if you've been through these places before. When you put yourself in those shoes, on the ground, in one of these neighborhoods, and you have to fucking navigate through that thing, it's gonna double, triple, maybe even quadruple the amount of time that it takes to get from point A to point B, to get through that neighborhood. It's guaranteed going to take at least twice as long. And it's also going to be a lot more mentally overstimulating because of how much you have to keep track of and how confusing again the layout is for you to navigate through, to get through that neighborhood, or to get to where you're getting to. It can be hard to keep track of all of that stuff. And so it's stacked against you, clearly. You're going to spend a lot more time, it's going to be a lot more frustrating, a lot more confusing to get through. So it's stacked against you. Blatantly, 100%. It's made to be against you walking through it, you using transit through it. You think, looking at these neighborhoods, right? Do you really think a 40-foot or even a 30-foot midi bus could fit through here? I mean, yeah, I guess it could. But it's not safe for the people on the bus. It's not safe for the bus itself. It certainly ain't safe for anybody on the ground. It's not even safe for the fellow motorists on the road. It's not. It's stacked against you. And also it's stacked against, therefore, the public transit nudges for that matter that can't even get through these neighborhoods, which is clearly intended. But at the same time, how many sharp turns in these narrow streets they'd have to make in order to get through it? Even a minibus would have a rough time being able to safely navigate such narrow streets, taking so many fucking sharp turns. It's stacked against intentionally public transit. What it would do psychologically, therefore, is if you're going through this experience in these neighborhoods, psychologically, whether consciously or subconsciously, it's putting into your head, I really wish I had a car right now. I could really use a car right now. I would love a ride. Why? Because it would save you a lot more time, at least in theory. And it would guarantee save you a lot more time. You'd probably cut the time in half that you'd spend on foot. It would even probably cut the time on public transit down by probably 15 to 20 minutes on average, I would think, going through the neighborhood to have your own personal vehicle. So, of course, that's psychologically going to be put into your head. It's intended. Then on top of that, say you finally get so frustrated and fed up with it, it's like, okay, this is fucking stupid. I have to have a car. I need a car. And you get a car. Great. See? Now they just profited off of you and that psychology they put into your head. The psychology of the layout of the suburbs that they've built. That they dictate how they must be blueprinted and thus laid out and built. They've won already. Because now, you went and bought a car. Even if it's used, they're still making money off it. They're still giving them exactly what was intended here. And then on top of that, so now the auto manufacturers are making tons of money. A lot more than they would normally. The fossil fuel companies are making a hell of a lot more money too. Because now there's more motorists on the road. There's more cars in use. Especially in slower speed situations, going around corners, getting lost because of the confusing layout. Would you look at that? Compared to a logical layout of a suburb, it guaranteed is at least going to take you twice as long to navigate through. Again, still working as intended. So they make twice as much money off of you driving through that neighborhood. And then on top of that, the more time you spend driving your car, the more wear and tear you're putting on your car, which in the long run means more money for the auto manufacturers. It's a reciprocal cycle. It's a self-fulfilling cycle. I guarantee you that that's why they construct things so illogically. And it's stacked against pedestrianism, against bicyclists, and against public transit. Because they don't want public transit in these neighborhoods, because they don't want people to be able to have the option and the choice to avoid using an automobile, a car. It's intended so that public transit literally cannot accommodate these neighborhoods. In the simplest way to put it, it's intended to make no sense. So you can take as much time as you can in there, getting confused, getting sick and tired of walking around trying to figure out what the fuck you're going, where the fuck you're going, where the fuck you're doing, how the heck you've been here before, or whatever it is. And if you're in a car, to make the fossil fuel companies a lot more money because you're burning twice as much fuel because you're spending twice as much time navigating the neighborhood too. And then 3, it's 100% guaranteed. Public transit vehicles can't go through there. I mean, a Ford Transit van or a Mercedes Sprinter van, transit vehicle, yeah, they'd be able to navigate just fine, obviously. They're made for this kind of stuff. Actually, they're made for executive transport, really. Shuttles. But they're not made for proper public transport. But you could make use of it if a suburb decided to say, hey, let's just make our own little tiny transit system. Kind of like Forest Grove has done with GroveLink. Although GroveLink really doesn't do much. It has 2 routes. It doesn't cover the entirety of Forest Grove either. This is what they want. And they know that a lot of these more affluent suburbs that they're building, because they're intentionally making them very pricey and aesthetically pleasing and modern so that a certain set of demographics that have money will actually pay the price to move there, live there. There's a very specific psychology to development for that and pricing for that reason as well. And ultimately, this is what it boils down to. And so this is what I've observed, and this is in my opinion, why and what this is intended for. They want to make it so illogical and so maddening because it's a psychological trick to ensure that they make even more money. To prevent public transit abilities to get access and serve the neighborhoods, as well as to make pedestrians and bicyclists think, I need a car, and then ultimately end up striving to get one so they can make them more money. It's just a self-fulfilling cycle. If you enjoyed and or got any kind of value out of this video, whether it is new perspective, a new understanding, a new idea, anything that basically means that you've learned something, basically. Value, right? Entertainment's technically a form of value too. If you got any value out of it, make sure you click the like button because, again, not only do I greatly appreciate it, but it's incredibly helpful as it lets the YouTube algorithm understand and know that you enjoyed it as well, not just me. And that's a really good thing because it means that if you enjoyed it, and got value out of it, well, clearly other people inevitably and guaranteed will as well. And so the algorithm recognizes this because you've liked the video, and then of course, it's more likely to recommend it to other people as well. With that said, thank you for watching. Thank you for choosing to spend some time with me today, hearing out a transit nut talk about something that he's very dedicated to and has a strong passion for. And who knows, maybe someday soon this might be able to inspire smaller towns or cities or communities somewhere in the nation or in the world to learn from this and be like, okay, so let's do the opposite of that. Let's actually try to change how this stuff works, at least in our local little spot and community. And then as we grow, slowly upscale it as needed, because especially if it works, well then, hey, perfect. Then there's no reason not to upscale it, and it will again inevitably work at that point as well. Anything like that to inspire some kind of a change, to inspire communities to be able to change it to benefit everybody within their communities is a huge bonus and boon. So if this at some point in time, even 25 years in the future, gets seen by a community and inspires them to do something, then that's amazing. Amazing. And I would absolutely love to be able to say that I was able to help inspire these new perspectives and ideas and these changes for the better. With that said, once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.